George, can you give us some idea why you're agreeing to this interview today?
I wanted to allow America to see me for who I truly am, without the filter or subject to any interpretation.
And who is the real George Zimmerman?
That's a great question. I'm figuring that out every day. I try and be a good person, a faithful person, a family man. But I do realize that I've been through a lot in life, and for better or for worse, everything I do is hyper analyzed, whether it's good or bad. And I realize I'm able now, because of what I've been through, to make an impact on people, the community, the charities, whatever it may be. So I do realize that I'm not as private an individual as I would like to be.
George, it's probably not a secret. You've had a ton of media coverage, and the media tends to portray you as a certain type of person. Is that the real George Zimmerman that the media is showing all the time?
Absolutely not. And I think that people, once they meet me face to face or sit down and have a cup of coffee with me, typically 99% of the time, they'll tell me, you're nothing like what the media portrayed. So it's hard for me to answer that question introspectively. I think that's something that an outside person could answer better. For various reasons, I don't watch the media. I stopped watching the media early on. And I don't know what percentage of the media plays into people's perception, and different people take the media at different weight.
There's been a lot of reports in the media concerning your ethnic or cultural background, and you certainly have a name that suggests you're Jewish, but as reported, you're Hispanic. What exactly is your family's ethnic and cultural makeup?
My father is American, several generations, and that's where the Zimmerman is a German last name. However, I was raised in a very Hispanic household. My mother is Peruvian, full-blooded. She was born and raised in Peru, more specifically Callao, which is right outside the capital of Lima. My grandmother moved in with my mother and my father prior to my birth and helped raise us, and she is, again, 100% Peruvian. Her father, which would be my great-grandfather, was actually Afro-Peruvian. He was a direct descendant from Africa that had moved to Peru and started his roots there, which eventually led to my grandma's birth and my mother, and etc. To be honest with you, I am aware of the entire white Hispanic debate, and it's, to me, I'm an American, and I think that's what an American is a melting pot of different ethnicities, and that's who I identify myself with, is just being an American.
What has your father done for a living in the past?
My father has done a lot. He always had at least one full-time job, which was typically his profession is the Army that he retired from after over 20 years of service, the United States Army. While he was in the Army, he always worked a part-time job, whether it was at the National Archives or working as a clerk at a convenience store. He did what he had to do to make ends meet with a family of 6, and eventually retired, and was fortunate enough to get hired with the Virginia Magistrate's office, and he became a magistrate for the tail end of his uh, life in Virginia. He was a magistrate specifically for Fairfax County in Virginia, which is one of the largest counties, and he has since retired. He's had, unfortunately, he's been disabled, so he's not working right now, but up until the time they left Virginia in about 2005 to 2006, he was working as a magistrate.
How about your mom?
My mom spent her entire career as a deputy clerk of court for Prince William County, Virginia. She was fortunate enough to work with Paul Ebert, which is a widely known prosecutor. And again, being a deputy clerk of court in Manassas, Northern Virginia, right outside of D.C., allowed her the opportunity to help a lot of the foreigners, a lot of Latin Americans that had just come to this country and didn't know the judicial system or the processes, to help them integrate into our culture, our community.
Tell me about Sherman Ware.
Sherman Ware was the African American gentleman that was unfortunately attacked outside of a Sanford bar. I had seen one quick story about it on the news, and it wasn't even on the news. I believe it was just on their website as a link. I tried to do research. I tried to find more information on it, and what I found was that there was very little media coverage. I then went to the NAACP office in Sanford and tried to contact someone there. It was not a physical manned location. There was a phone number. The person I contacted at the NAACP office in Sanford told me that they were aware of the incident, but it was not financially feasible for them to send people to represent Mr. Ware at the time. At that juncture, I decided that I would have to do whatever I could to help raise awareness for Mr. Ware. I decided to go on Sundays after church, predominantly to African American churches in Sanford, and hand out flyers with information for people to voice their opinion, information about the incident, what had happened, a link to the website where they could view the video directly, and a special meeting that was being held in City Hall for the Sherman Ware incident specifically. And as a product of that meeting, Mr. Ware had enough pressure had built at that point and continued to build to the point where his attacker was arrested. Mr. Ware was finally acknowledged that he was attacked, because for a while they weren't acknowledging him, and his attacker was forced to pay his medical bills as well as donate to a charity of Mr. Ware's choice. I never expected that the efforts I made for Mr. Ware would ever come back and benefit me in any way. But the reality is, what no one knows except for my close family, is that when I first turned myself into jail, unfortunately they take away your undergarments and you're left in a blue jumper and it's freezing. I was in my cell, I was cold, I was in a very bad place, and a chaplain brought me out and took me to a private room where he and I could speak. And he looked across the table from me and he said, I stayed after services because I wanted to meet you, and I have one question to ask you. And may I ask you? And I said, certainly. And he simply asked me, is everything I heard you did for Sherman true? In those words. And I said, yes. And he said, has anyone ever thanked you? And I said, no. And he said, thank you. And I immediately welled up. I had never expected in that position in that day for someone to thank me for Sherman, or for my efforts on behalf of Sherman. Um, as a result of that, the chaplain came back. We prayed together. We prayed together. He left for the evening, and I returned to my cell. Probably about 30 to 45 minutes afterwards, the chaplain came back with some socks that had been donated and handed me them through my cell door. And I've never been more grateful for any gift I've ever received in my life. I mean, that gift of warmth when you're in solitary confinement is tremendous. And I realized that I only got those socks and that warmth and that prayer, that meeting with the pastor, the chaplain, solely because of my efforts with Sherman Ware. And it felt good to know that everything comes around in life. And even though you think some things are never going to be seen, or things aren't going to see the day of light, or your actions go without acknowledgement, in the long run, the reality is everything comes out. And I've learned that even those little actions people appreciate, and it benefits you in the long run.
George, you have a bit of experience in mentoring. Can you expand on that experience a little bit?
Sure. My wife, Shelley, at the time, and I had decided that we wanted to give back to the community, make an impact on the youth, and just help others. We enrolled in a program called the Model Mentoring Program, which was funded by the state of Florida. It has now since been defunded. The program, though, set up wonderful parameters such as male paired with male, female with female. So my wife, Shelley, was paired. We were fortunate enough to have a brother and sister that we were paired with. So we actually each had our own individual child we were mentoring, but as a married couple, we were able to spend the time together, the four of us, doing activities such as playing basketball. We'd go to the science center. I promised my child I was mentoring that if he promised the sixth grade, I would take him to meet, if he graduated the sixth grade, that I would take him to meet Dwight Howard. He did, and I fulfilled my promise to him, which I think motivated him tremendously. I know it did. He would tell his mother to save voicemails from teachers throughout the week. Teachers would call his house and leave messages saying that they had seen a dramatic improvement in his attitude and his grades, and she contributed that to my direct involvement with him. We also, Shelley's child she was mentoring was a female that had aspirations to become a nurse. So her and Shelley spent several hours at the library, or again the science center, helping further her interest in the medical field. Unfortunately, I did find out that when I'd play basketball with the kids, with my child I was mentoring, there were so many people within that community that had wanted a mentor that it turned out being me going and meeting them and playing basketball with half a dozen kids on a Sunday instead of just one-on-ones. But I would always try and make time to spend that. Again, that's one of the parameters that the program had set in, was spending that one-on-one time with them. The program, unfortunately, like I said, it was defunded. And we had asked the children's parents if we could still be a part of their lives, because as I said, we were receiving so much in return for our participation. And she said certainly that she wanted us to be part of their lives. So we, and again, we were never compensated. We never received anything from them. But when we had initially signed up to be mentors, we signed 1-year commitments. And that was based off of the program's statistics showing that if children were mentored and the mentee or the mentor actually withdrew before a year, the children statistically ended up worse off than if they had never been mentored at all. Well, when the state cut the funding, we were within that first year time frame, and we both felt that we couldn't let the kids go by the wayside just because of the lack of funding. So we kept the parameters from the program, and we kept mentoring up until I kept mentoring my mentee up until the weekend before the February 26, 2012 incident.
And what was the primary ethnic or cultural makeup of the young people you mentored?
When you sign up for, or when you start with the program, the model mentoring program, you don't get to pick and choose what race, what age group, anything of that nature. Now, the only caveat to that is that they do pair male with male and female with female. So we didn't know who we were going to be paired with. Again, we were just fortunate enough to have these two African American brother and sisters that had a wonderful African American family and community around them that wanted them to do better, wanted to give them every advantage they could to excel in life. Again, when I play basketball with the kids, when we would go to church events, and the neighborhood was 100% African American. And I'm fortunate, again, that when I go to that neighborhood, my car's recognized, they wave at me, they smile, they still remember me for all the good things that we were able to do together. A lot of kids ask me if I could be their mentor still. And that really strikes a chord with me, and I appreciate that those things, as small as I thought they were at the time, and again, as I thought I was giving to them, in reality, it's still paying itself towards me. I'm still benefiting from it.
What is it like on a day-to-day basis being George Zimmerman, going to lunch, going to dinner, getting groceries, carrying out the daily activities of life? What is it like for you right now?
I wish I could give you a quick response or a brief response, but the reality is every day is different. The only consistent is always having to look over my shoulder, always concerned that for others around me. I miss out on a lot of the things that I would normally enjoy doing. I can't go outside and play basketball. I can go to the grocery store if I wear a hat and sunglasses, but even then I'm recognized. It's difficult, and it's something that I didn't ask for, but it's been placed on me, and so I have to try my best to adapt to it.
Do you hope sometime in the future you have a better life than you have right now?
I absolutely hope for the best, but I also am prepared for the worst. I mean, I do also realize that there was no expiration date on the bounty on my head, at least on the posters that I saw circulating. No one called off the bounty. So I do realize, I hope for the best. I truly do. And I try to work towards that goal, but I also keep in the back of my mind the reality that it may not get better, and it could even get worse.
If things do go by some circumstance the way you want in the future, George, what would you like that future to look like?
On a grand scale, I would like to make enough of an impact to change the judicial system to guarantee that what happened to me never happens again to anybody. On a smaller, more personal level, I'd like to continue my education, if possible, one day. I was on my path to getting my AA and aspiring to be a lawyer and eventually, hopefully, a judge. But again, going back to your previous question, those are my hopes. I do also have to cope with the reality that I may never be able to attend a college or university and fulfill those. So again, I take it day by day, and just hope and wish and pray every morning for the best.
If you did get to become an attorney, what kind of an attorney would you be after this experience?
I've given that some thought, and I think that a civil rights attorney or a defense attorney, predominantly. Of course, I would love to work with children, family law, that kind of stuff as well. But I think the top two are either civil rights or defense.
If there's one specific way you want people to think about you in the future, what would that be, George?
I would love for people just to have a clean slate, just no prejudice, just think of me, the person, not who I've been portrayed as by the media, by the state, by the government, whomever it may be. I wish that people would just put all that aside and just start afresh the way uh, I do with everyone else. I believe that everyone has their own dynamics, person to person. Different characteristics clash, different characteristics and traits mesh, and I just want people to judge me for me, not what any predisposition they may have.